What? Just
Hello?
Rat race?
Yeah. I did talk to the recording or not?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 13 of the Pickers Market podcast. Well, I sounded like a radio guy there.
Wow.
I think, I think Tony's going to be, I'm threatening Tony's job here, aren't I?
That was jealous.
That was good. It's the one and only time I'll be at all professional on this. All right. So episode 13, got Tyler here, got Keith here. The A squad just keeps showing back up, right?
It's grinding away.
Yeah.
We just
Trying
do what
to.
we do. We do what we do. How's it going?
Good.
Yeah. Good.
Nothing.
Summer, right?
Anything interesting? Anything exciting?
$6 billion party tonight.
Oh,
Or I should say
yeah.
party, happy hour. Happy hour.
Well, hey, happy
It's
hour,
still
little
party.
party.
We'll take
Yeah, exactly.
We just got off the 4th of July week. That was good, right?
Yeah, we can. Yeah,
A little
good
break.
stuff. Summer's been what? Okay.
Yeah.
It's just been really rainy.
Not good for you. You're a heat guy.
I'm a heat guy and a lake guy, and it's just.
No, you're
Yeah,
kind of over
kinda.
2 with the rainy and
Yeah.
cooler. I'm okay with the cooler. I
Yeah.
could not. I'd be okay without all the rain. Yeah, the rain's been
Rain's been brutal.
Rain's tough to get. You just can't do. I'd rather do stuff in snow than rain, right? I feel like I can do more in snow.
Yeah.
If it's
Yeah,
raining,
yeah.
I'm just limited in what I can do.
I
Like
agree with
this week,
that.
the forecast was no rain. And we've had rain the last 2 days.
I literally just turned our sprinkler system on the other day for the first time. So
Oh
it's like-
wow!
that's probably the longest. We've been in our house for 25
I was gonna
years.
say that is.
For normally
Really?
a year have it on. Yeah.
I've got one of the like quote unquote smart systems. It literally ran. It's supposed to run for as long as kind of to saturate and based upon the weather. It ran for 9 minutes the other day. I was like, just don't even bother. Why are you turning on?
Oh, God.
All right. Quick thing, we got the Olympics coming up. Do you guys watch the Olympics?
I do.
Yeah, I do. I mean,
What are the
more
events?
occasionally.
Swimming and gymnastics.
Okay.
Yeah, I like gymnastics, and I'm going back to like hockey, so that's a winter one. So, but yeah, and the quick hitter summer ones will be like the 100-yard. And
Oh,
stuff
okay.
like that.
I was gonna
So,
say neither you track and field. You
track and field.
okay.
Yeah,
Well, like for gymnastics, men's gymnastics, Shane Wiskus is an alternate. He was on the team in 2020, but he's a Minnesota boy. Went to North Shore, where my wife's mom used to run the gym.
Oh, very cool.
So it'll be fun to watch him. Unfortunately, he's an alternate, but
Yeah.
this year, so that was kind of heartbreaking. But
Tyler was close to the 6 degrees of Kevin
Yeah.
Bacon over there. He almost had it.
he still can claim it.
Good enough. Yeah, exactly. He's way closer than I'll ever be. So good for you. Do you guys ever have any interest in going to the Olympics? Would you go? Would you spend money to go? I guess is the
I would
question.
not. Only wanted. I mean, again, ice hockey. If it was something like if you knew it was going to be like the 1980 Olympics,
yeah.
where it was more. I mean,
The
just
coolest thing ever.
yeah,
if you knew that. Yeah,
just
you'd
a
sign up.
good, exciting. If you knew a bunch of the players or
Gotcha.
that type of deal.
Yeah.
That would be the
I would
one
go to
event.
I would go to the hockey. We'd probably go to, if it was in town, we'd go to gymnastics.
Okay,
Yeah.
but only in town. You wouldn't travel to see it. You would if it was in the
No.
U. When is it? I think it's in the U.S. in the next 4 years or something. But you wouldn't go to a place to see it.
I don't know if I would.
Would you?
Not like no, because here's what I always think is I think you're too spread apart. So it's going to be a pain in the butt to get to places and do all that stuff. And plus the breaks in between all of the actual events, I think would drive me nuts. Like in TV, you can just flip to the other
Yeah.
thing that's going on. You ain't doing that in person. So I think I would struggle with that. I think it
Yeah.
would just be not my jam.
Yeah.
And then the amount of people would drive me crazy too, I think.
Yeah, you don't like people. That's doesn't work.
My misanthropic patterns over here showing again. All right, let's talk about finance a little bit here. We're going to hit on the hot button today. The hot button today, I have a theory for you guys, and I'm not even sure I agree with this theory.
Way to
But
throw it out then.
yeah, exactly. I'm really hedging that bet pretty quick, aren't I? The theory I have is inflation already under control? And I'm going to ask that to you all with a couple of stats in mind. So core PCE, which is what the Fed's favorite measure of inflation is, CPI is coming out this week, but core PCE was at the end of the month, last month, right?
Yep.
That's the Fed's favorite measure, and it was 2.57%, 2.6%, basically, right in line with expectations. And I kind of set the expectation over, okay, what's the longest I could look at? And I looked at from 1960 to 2024, the average is actually 3.24%. So it's above the Fed's target of 2%, but below long-term averages.
That surprises me.
That surprised me too.
Yes, yeah.
But then I was thinking about, don't you kind of use your baseline assumption of inflation as 3%? Like, I mean, historically over longer periods of time, that's generally what people have said. Even though the target's now 2%, probably because we're a slower growth economy.
Yep.
So we should probably have less inflation as a result, but it is below that expectation, or it is below that long-term average. The other one I looked at is, I don't know if you guys are familiar with this firm called Trueflation. Have you seen that? Tyler has seen it. Tyler's a stats guy, so that doesn't surprise me. Gangl, Trueflation at all? Have you seen that one at all?
I just heard him talk about it the other day, so it's
okay.
It's just,
I don't know how much you could take a grain or a block of salt with it. I don't know which.
It's kind of like just taking like
real-time data.
Real-time data in rather than backward-looking data, which is PCE and CPI.
Yeah, exactly. So trying to get a more real-time assessment of what inflation looks like. Their current measurement, I just looked at it today, is 1.87% year-over-year growth, which is below the Fed's current target.
The other thing I'll throw out there too, just for listeners, is CPI basket is measured differently than PCE basket, and PCE basket is measured differently than Trueflation. So all the baskets are different.
Yeah,
too.
when you say inflation, it depends on what you're looking at, right? It always depends on what you're looking at, and I'm not really going into nerding out, but all the mathematics that goes into it and the backward looking stuff gets really wonky really fast.
Yeah. The headline one people are generally that they talk about is CPI though, right?
Headline core
CPI.
For investors and for what you see on TV,
number,
and that's what you hear usually on media. I hear a lot of CPI.
I think core CPI is probably the most watched thing, and then headline to say for us, headline is actually quite important because energy and food prices. That's the consumer's pocketbook right there. Mm-hmm. But, I guess the question I have is Jerome Powell came out last week and said, had his commentary and said more good data is needed for inflation. Do you guys think that's right? Or do you think we should be cutting now?
Go ahead, Tyler.
Oh, I mean, I don't think we should be cutting now because data's the aggregate data is starting to soften. I wouldn't say necessarily weaken, but it's just softening. Mm-hmm. So it's slowing down a little bit, but we still have GDP growth estimates of like 1.5% for this quarter. Jobs are still strong. Job availability is still there. Inflation is still coming down. Yes, it's not the 2% target, but I would much rather live with the 3.5 or PCE, the 2.7 or 2.6% rather than the 9 that we saw. So the fact that we've come down from those levels and everything has remained pretty resilient through that, and we still have resiliency going on right now, I just don't see any reason that they need to cut.
Yep.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think the data has been coming in softer, but we've been a little hotter economy, I think, than most people expected as well. Sure. So I think we're coming off a higher rate and we're slowing. That is true, but I think their fear is really if they start cutting and have to reverse it, if inflation's, if we just go back a couple of months ago, remember people were talking about, inflation's peaking back up. Yep. So it's like, I still think we're in that soft period. And I do think we're probably getting closer to a cut with some of the stuff. We're starting to see consumers starting to get a little more uneasy on some of their spending. So you're starting to see some of the retail stocks have been hit pretty good, and some of the things are slowing down. Transportation stocks are kind of coming off. So I do think inflation is getting under control, but I do think they'll be a little more patient yet. So I do think there will be a cut coming sooner than if you asked me a month ago. So I was 0 to 1, leaning hard on 0. I think now I'm kind of getting towards the 1 before year end.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's interesting. From what they will do, I don't think I don't think they're in any rush to do so. I think CPI numbers and PCE numbers both would have to come down further before they move.
Let me ask you this: do you think cutting from 5.5 to 5.25 is going to make any difference, anyways?
No.
That's the reason I don't think they need to do it, because I think once that first cut happens, I think investors are going to get so excited that we're on the train of cuts coming every meeting. So I think that's maybe a reason that they're hesitating on this first cut, because I think once they make that first cut, they're gonna be like, unless they really communicate the fact that it is data dependent. This is a one-time deal. Because I think once you get that first cut, they're going to be investors are going to be like, oh, okay, now we're going to get 50 basis points, 75 basis points. And you know what? The market loves, lower interest rates and helps spending. So,
yeah, I always wonder, because it's always context based, right? Is that what are they going to, how much damage are they willing to take in the economy before, if let's say GDP data starts to erode faster than inflation data, right? Are we going to be celebrating cuts then, or are we too worried about the economy to celebrate cuts? Well, that's really, because I'm always saying none of this lives in a bubble, right? You can't do it on an isolated basis. You have to say, what is going to happen that's going to necessitate that cut? Is it, hey, we controlled inflation and we still have a growing economy? Well, outstanding. Yeah, then things are probably going to get way better. But if our economy is starting to go in the toilet, and that's why they're cutting, I don't think the investors would like that a whole heck of a lot.
Well, I think you also remember if we rewind like a year to a year and a half ago, Powell said that they're okay with taking pain. Like they're okay with relatively little GDP growth and unemployment going up to about 4.5. Like they're okay with that. So we're nowhere near that.
Yeah.
So obviously they've changed their minds a few times. Because Powell also said they were expecting 3 cuts this year, and now we're not there. But anyways, like if Powell and the Fed continue to believe that they don't need to cut and they're okay taking some of that pain at some point, we shouldn't have any cuts this year at all, right?
Yeah, you would think that that's actually the way it would go.
Yeah.
I hearken back to a long time ago, December 2018, when they said they were willing to take it, and then the market just tattooed it straight downward.
All right, we're changing our mind.
And yeah, they there was only a threshold of pain that they were willing to accept. So usually the market tells them how much pain they're willing to accept. Yeah. So we'll see. But yeah, I want to pivot on this because you hit on something that actually I wanted to talk about, is that one of the things we've all said is the rising interest rates because of the service economy that we're in now, and because of the companies that are driving the markets, the technology companies that really don't need to, it's not CapEx, it's not goods. They're not, they can self-fund themselves, right? So it kind of blunts the ability of interest rates to do things to control the economy. Does that work the other way too? Do cuts not help as much as they used to in the past?
I think cuts will actually help regardless of if you can fund yourself, because if debt gets cheaper, right? Why use up your cash pile to fund something when you could just take out a cheap loan and pay it off over 10 years for these companies, right? Yeah. So like even like Apple, for example, they used to not have any debt,
right?
Yeah, in the ultra low interest rate environment, they started to borrow at 0.05% for whatever their credit rating.
They still got a better credit rating than the U.S. government.
Probably.
I think they do.
Who doesn't? No, just kidding.
But now they have just as much debt as they do cash on hand, which is good because they can pay off their debt at any point they wanted to, but they don't need to because it's so cheap. So I think regardless of whether or not we get cuts or whether or not these companies can self-fund themselves, I think if rates do go lower, you could see them ramp up their potential CapEx rather than kind of restraining it to whatever their cash flow is.
Yeah, I think that especially the small and mid-cap companies that are a little more incremental, their spend, I think their CapEx, if their interest rates are coming down, they will do that extra project that they were maybe holding off on that didn't quite pencil in. If all the numbers work, okay, rates are down a couple percent, that makes a lot more sense to do this kind of bigger project for them.
Yeah. I generally agree with you too, under that sentiment, with the thought process again that none of this stuff happens in isolation. Right? They're not going to do a project if they think the economy is right?
Yeah, no.
They're not. The NPV will not matter to them. They'll just be like, nope, I'm cash hoarding because I don't know what's going to happen. So we'll see where that is. But based upon where we are in current trends, I agree with you both.
Yeah.
Cool. I want to kind of correlate that with a little bit of housing and rates. There's a theory going on out there, and I won't give you whether I agree with this or disagree with this. I just want to give you the theory to start out with here, is that lowering rates in a way could actually lower inflation. Here's the theory, that high rates, that housing is a big component of our inflation right now, right? Would you both agree with that?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay. So that high rates are artificially keeping supply low because you can't make transitions when you have high relative rates. So housing prices are remaining elevated because there's still demand there. Millennials, they kind of want to live that American dream and buy a house. So the demand is still there. The housing supply is limited, so prices remain elevated. Rents follow housing prices, right? And the rise in housing prices usually correlates with rent growth. So that's elevated as well. So lowering rates help that trend. It would reduce the impact because you'd have more supply out there. You'd have reduced rates, so your prices come down. And so your rent prices, if that's true that they correlate, should follow suit in the effect of if your mortgage is lower, the relative rent price should be lower as well. So tell me what you think of that theory. Would lowering rates actually lower inflation? Would it finish the job that Powell and the crew want to do?
I think that's a little wishful thinking, and by the people that want lower rates to say that's going to lower inflation, because Tyler's going to write about it. We're going to talk about it here in the next couple of days about where we think. Looking at charts of where inflation is and home prices, I am surprised. We talked in the past that I've come from a home building background, and I did that in college and stuff like that. That typically when rates go up, housing market slows down, right? And housing prices actually maybe just go flattish, right? Flattish. Yep. They don't necessarily go down. But what really surprised me is as these rates have been ticking up, that the housing prices has ticked up as well.
Up with it.
So I think that's a little bit of an anomaly right now. And part of it, I think, is due to the COVID. Part of it is supply, constraint issues. Some of it is also that labor went out of the market, decided not to come back into the market as well. So those are some of the factors. Now, I think what happens if they do lower rates, the housing prices can continue to inch up. I think we're going to slow regardless of, the moderation of the pace of the house increase. So I don't think it's going to actually, if you lower interest rates, that's going to cause prices to go down or less inflation. I think maybe the housing part of overall inflation maybe comes down a little bit. You can maybe that argument, maybe. How about you, Tyler?
There's two scenarios that run through my head on this usually. So I can partially see the case of that, of what you laid out. If interest rates were to trickle down very, very slowly to allow the higher end buyers that can afford an interest rate at 6.5%, 6.25%, kind of trickle their way in.
Yep.
And then as it slowly goes down over the next 5 years, those people begin to trickle in. The problem with that is whenever we get a 10-year treasury or mortgage rate that begins to drop, you see a flood of buyers enter the market, which is pushing up prices. Because the problem is like if you have a mortgage at 2.5%, you're certainly, unless if you're forced to, you're not getting rid of that to go get basically the same price house
at 6%, not 7% or whatever,
because that's all you can afford. Because it's just, and then if interest rates drop dramatically, then you're going to have this rush like we did in 2020 and 2021 that caused house prices to go up 25 and 15% consecutively. So I don't necessarily agree with that. I could see the case if interest rates just slowly inch down over time.
Yeah,
but they don't inch down over time. So
there's a disconnect, I think, between supply and demand. I think the home builders in general are producing a lot less houses now. They've come just kind of like energy companies. They become a little wiser and kind of, okay, we can make just as much margin on doing less houses and holding our price. I think that's part of it. I think they're less of, oh boy, interest rates are low, demand's going to high. I'm going to buy as many lots as I can, slap up as many houses and make money that way. I think they're like, I can make just as much money on, producing less houses.
It's a good point. All right, here's Jeremy's opinion on that. I think it's garbage. I think that theory's terrible.
I thought maybe you're going to go the other way.
No, I think that theory's terrible. And because it doesn't consider any of the ancillary moves. I think you hit it on the head, is that demand surges. People are waiting, right? I mean, there's a pent up demand for houses that if you get down to 6%, you see it. I mean, you've seen it every time it started to creep its way down. Demand starts rising it back up. Activity starts going up again. Builders will be out there doing their thing and that kind of stuff. It also doesn't consider what happens after, in my opinion, is what do you do when you buy a house? You start buying everything you can to get that house to be in the way you want it to be, which rolls through our entire system and all the services, because Jeremy isn't doing his own work, right?
We know that. If you've been listening long enough,
I'd have 3 fingers left on my hand if I did my own work. So I'm hiring that out. All of a sudden the jobs come up as a result. So I think I just think it looks at the lens under, I've talked about nothing is in isolation. And I think that's a massive isolation argument. I think maybe temporarily it might do the job quickly, but at the risk of really re-ramping inflation, which literally no one wants.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
Housing touches 15 to 18% of the overall GDP growth. To your point, it's like once you buy a house, you get all the services, you got landscaping, you got new curtains, you got this and that going on. You're buying all these different things. So that, Tyler, what you just said is when rates come down, people have an X amount of dollars they want to spend on their mortgage, right? So that's where rates come down.
They think about a monthly payment.
Your
Everybody
monthly payment, and it's like, okay, the rates coming down, that helps me afford this more expensive house than I thought I could. And oh, by the way, now I have a little extra, and you're just going to spend it.
Well, I think what's interesting too is right now, I think, what was the number for cash purchases that I showed you?
Yeah,
Manhattan was like 65% or something.
I think it was over 35.
Yeah,
I
it was
think
like
for
39 maybe
Yep.
of nationwide of cash purchases. So
which
it's
that's
higher.
a surprise. I mean,
It's
that's
higher than I would have thought.
that's a bigger stat.
Wow.
Again,
So you're battling that, especially if you're a new home buyer,
Mhm.
right? Or if you're in that kind of early phase of home buyer and you're trying to move up, right? You're battling against the boomers that have the cash to do that, right? The other thing is people don't necessarily save up for that down payment to get themselves into a higher kind of bracket where the houses tend to sit on the market longer either, right? Typically your first purchase is a pretty small home, kind of that really
the scale
starter
up.
home,
Yep.
and then you scale it up.
that's what you did recently, haven't you?
Yeah, it was not fun.
Living the scale up life over there.
I gave away my 2.5% mortgage for a 6.5. So yeah, I went.
No one would do it except for Tyler, according to Tyler.
Yeah.
but
do as I say, not as I do.
We're kind of forced.
But you're living that millennial lifestyle, right? Is that what forced you into that? Is I am having
Bigger
a family,
yeah.
and I need to move up.
And so
You're not unique in that regard.
But we were also in probably a smaller home than a lot of millennials that were starting out. Like we were in just a very, very small townhouse. We had our first kid there, and then it just wasn't enough room for our second. A lot of people are in the single family already that maybe fits 2, potentially 3, and they're just making it work. But to the point on the amount of buyers coming into the market, it's a big supply issue, right? If we look at Redfin data, I'm writing on this for a piece that comes out soon, but basically, if you look at every month of May going back to 2012, May and June are typically the big times where people sell their homes and homes are bought because it's summer, things look nice, and people are out and about.
School year's over, right?
School year's over, so then you're free to move. But this May was significantly lower than any other May that we've had all the way back to 2012. That's as far back as the data went. So it's just a pure supply thing. So it does. So even if you don't have the typical amount of buyers because interest rates are high, there's still just not nearly enough listings on there for people to buy, which is going to continue to push up prices regardless if interest rates stay flat or go down, I think.
Yeah. I think you can entice, buyers or sellers are the other way too, right? Is that they go have to buy something else and the number comes down and all of a sudden it's like, I can make my price work on the other side. So maybe I'll sell mine. I think lower rates do entice more inventory, I think just in general. So there's a part of that too. So I think that might help the supply a little bit, but I think demand just supersedes it.
But if all of a sudden you go from, a 6.5% mortgage rate and they drop to 4.5%, you're going to have this flood of buyers. Yeah. And yes, you might get more inventory, but
there'll be plenty of demand to swallow it all.
Exactly.
So much demand right now.
That's why I'm saying I just find that
I don't see a
theory.
Curious to kind of push this back on you. Is there a fix? What is the fix?
The fix for
the current dilemma that we're in.
I think
inflation dilemma or housing dilemma?
Housing.
I think it's time. I think if your rates stay where they're at, people get used to them, and then that's just kind of house prices moderate. Again, I'll date myself. I built my house. I'm in the same house I built in 2000. Our interest rate for a 30-year mortgage was over 7%, right? You hear the horror stories of people saying theirs were high teens. Mine was 7%, 50. And then as over the course of time, when rates went lower, I refinanced. And same thing. I refinanced below 3%, right? So it's like I'm still in the same house. I have no plan on moving anyways, but that 3% is certainly a lot nicer than 7%.
Yeah. It's just people getting used to it. Yeah. My first house, I thought I got a deal at 6.
Yeah.
That's Remember, we're higher now, but we weren't that much higher.
In the scenario that you're in your house, you're basically an empty nester at this point.
Getting there,
right?
So
well, he's a comebacker.
He's a summer
comebacker.
Boomeranger.
But let's say you want to downsize.
Yeah.
Are you going to be willing to sell your house to then move into something that has a 7% mortgage and get rid of your 2.5?
Yeah. Although it's funny you bring that subject up. So I mentioned to my wife that we're getting closer to that thinking of, the kids wherever, they'll be in college and potentially, maybe we'd sell the house. She goes, we're never selling this house.
What are you selling for? Oh,
that's what
to go buy a house on a lake in a nice area. Yeah,
somewhere warm. I don't know.
Oh, well,
maybe in winter.
I could grant you that. I could grant. Okay, I got you that.
And then you'd split them up. So then, again, I run differently than a lot of people. So it's I would look at the bottom.
Yeah.
Well, and depending on time too. I mean, and I'm not going to get into your personal finances, but he might be a cash buyer too. And that's in that side is that he's built up a lot of equity. And I think there's a lot of people that are building up more and more and more and more equity. Rates come down and they only have to finance 20-30% of it. They might make that move. Yeah, I think it's time. I think that really is the fix, is that over longer periods of time, we got so crazy in 2004 to 2006 range, right? We were massively overbuilding. We've more than corrected that now. I think you're right. I think the home builders are trying to be less cyclical than they were in history. They're just trying to say, I can still make money here. There's a natural equilibrium that it causes. Just this rate, I mean, it's the fastest rate increase in history. It causes people to discombobulate for a little bit. Time will bring that to equilibrium. I just think that is the answer. Yeah. Cool. All right, we're going to pivot. Let's talk about, we're going to go completely different here. A little spaghetti wall action. This is maybe me a little bit on a soapbox. So I'm kind of on a soapbox all day today here.
That's no lie. I've been hearing it run around.
Everything as an investment. Why do we feel like nowadays, and maybe this isn't nowadays, maybe it's just always been the way it is. Why do we have to feel like we have to make money off everything? And I'm going to give you a couple examples of this. For the younger generation, if we want to do this older, younger, sneakers. I like wearing them. I buy them to use. I do not buy them to make money off of selling them, which seems to be a thing. Mm-hmm. It got to be a very big thing. I don't know how big of a thing it is now.
Depends on the category.
Exactly. But this is not, again, I wouldn't call sneakers hey, they could do a limited run, or they could say it's a limited run, but then I got limited runs as many times as I want to have a limited run, right? The other one is literally recording everything in your life as we sit here on a podcast. Literally recording everything in your life for content monetization, right? I mean, just I was at this cool thing. I need to take a picture of that because my subs will go up, or that kind of thing. And even in youth sports, this is the one that kind of drives me a little crazy, because I've had this conversation with people before about rationalizing the spend that they're going to do on youth sports for the potential scholarship down the road. So apparently everything is just an investment now, right? Everything you spend money on is an investment. Why do we feel that? I mean, we got to put our psychology hats on here for this one a little bit, but why do we feel that way?
I'll let Tyler talk about the tennis shoes and the.
Well, I think everything, and part of it, I think, is a rise of social media.
Yeah,
right?
I think that's the biggest thing. The ability to sell stuff online.
Yeah, well, not just that, but it's the status, right? Like, can you afford this car? Okay, once you have that car, now you need to go get a boat. Okay, you have the boat, now you need to get this fancy house or get this or that. And so people are just trying to find ways that they can generate money, right, to keep up with the lifestyle of social media. Social media helped create the marketplace, but I think it also exploded kind of that I need to make money because I want to buy this because I want to be like all of these other people.
Gotcha.
Right.
I'm going to counter that for a bit, because old schoolers over here, pre-social media, it's not like this was not a thing, right? And I have two examples for you. Baseball cards. People thought they were going to retire on their Ken Griffey Jr. rookie cards. And Beanie Babies. Oof. I mean, remember that? Like, people were buying those things and saying, I'm gonna retire on these things. These little dumb plush toys. Those were an investment for them too. So it doesn't feel, I agree with you that social media, I think, has amplified it, but it doesn't go to the psychology of why we think of almost, of very strange things as investments. Is it just human nature to say, this is a way I see someone here making money, so I need to make money off of it too?
Maybe it allows you to, or justifies you buying it, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to buy this because it's an investment.
That's what I think to your sports thing.
I think that's the sports.
That's the sports angle. I think there's where I'm going to take my kid to XYZ camps. We're going to do this, all this travel and all this expense. And oh, by the way, he or she's going to get a scholarship. And usually doesn't work out that way.
Right.
I know a few friends of mine that it actually has, and it's been an investment. But I think that's more of kind of a psychology thing to make people feel a little better about the money they're spending on.
I was just going to say
activity.
Yeah. If the kid likes it and you have the money, go for it. Let it rip.
Yep.
I do not care one iota. But if you're using that and as the justification for spending that, it makes no sense to me, because you can just not spend that, put that in the account. I guarantee you'll be self-funded scholarship by doing just that.
I had that conversation a few years ago. My daughter was high-level gymnastics. So Tyler knows it's not cheap.
Yeah.
And he was, the reason my daughter she wasn't going to college, but she enjoyed it.
Yeah.
He was absolutely 100% convinced that his daughter is going to get a D1 scholarship and it's going to be XYZ dollars. And
ooh, that's tough math.
And especially when the skill sets weren't showing that was going to happen. I'm like, you know what you're spending here every month? You put that for the next 4 years if you're going to be at this gymnastics place, and it's like that would pay for half of your college, or
exactly
a quarter of it.
And if the kid is just miserable while doing it, and that's the only reason you're and not enjoying the team aspect or anything of it, then
that's the one.
And that's the worst rationalization of all.
What do you spend your money? You're not selling anything in your trinkets, any of your baseball cards you buy, your Ken Griffey, they're not on the market.
All right, I will give myself a punch in the face for this one. I have baseball cards in my closet somewhere. Yeah. I have kept them since I was a kid. I still at this point don't even know why. I don't know what's in there. I guarantee if I open it up, there's probably more spiders in there than there are valuable things. But it's one of those things I haven't thrown away yet.
Yeah.
Well, to the chagrin of my wife.
Same here. I actually have some too.
Look at you.
Yeah.
I mean,
so
I still have mine. Mine are at my parents', but actually when they moved, so my parents just recently moved, and I was able to actually look through them.
Mm-hmm.
It was fun.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, I'm not going to go get any of them looked at because I'm sure none of them mean anything. So there's no point.
I have a friend that trades memorabilia, and he actually makes money. I don't know how, but he seems to make money on doing it. It's probably buying and selling and but
he's middleman, right?
Yeah, he's more middleman. But
he's trying to buy from a person at low price and sell to a person at high price.
But his interest originally came from owning cards himself, right?
Okay,
it's kind of like you and I. Mine's sitting in a box, and I can almost guarantee there's probably not a good one in a bunch either. So it's just wasting space, just kind of like your wife's like, what's going on here?
Well, I'm going to wrap a bow on it just because why this got me on my soapbox the other day as I was doing a project at my house, and I was actually helping out, which is a rarity for me, if you all know.
We want to see a video of that.
Yeah. No, you don't. It went poorly. But I was talking to the guy about the project I was doing, and he's like, oh, that'll really up the resale value of your house. And I'm like, I'm not selling. One, I'm not doing this for resale value. Two, I'm not selling my house forever. Three, I actually don't think you're actually that accurate. But I was like, I don't do this to, I could tell because we were talking about the cost and I was making jokes about how expensive it was. And he's like, oh, well, you'll get that back. I'm like, no, I probably won't.
Don't worry. I'll just deliver pizzas if it costs.
Yeah, exactly. So I'll probably be around for a while on that one. But that's what it got me thinking about it, is that's where his head went immediately, is like, oh, you need to justify that cost by the resale value of your house. I'm like, no, I just like that. I want my house to be exactly what I want it to be, and I'm okay with that.
Actually, this goes back, now that you bring that up, this goes back to a couple weeks ago when we were talking about home investment.
Yeah.
Steph and I watch HGTV because it's fun, and there's always the home flip shows.
Mm-hmm.
And they always show, here's what they bought it for, here's what they sold it for. And it's like, oh, they made $110,000.
Yeah.
But it's like, okay, but they put $100,000 into it, so they made $10,000. So, right, like over a
6-month period.
Yeah, do the interest.
And then you have interest costs,
headache costs.
I don't know if you really made any money.
Yeah, I think people can make, but they got to be like you. They can't be like me, right? That's how you make money flipping, is that you can do some of the things on your own. You're basically charging yourself the labor, and then you make money off of that.
So
With me, I'd have no chance.
So the guy you were helping out, was it a friend or just a
rando dude?
Just a rando dude. Well, part of that he probably told you just to make you feel better about.
That's true,
right? Just yeah, you'll get your money back in that.
That's
like,
true.
Whatever.
Yeah, that's true. He could be just trying to be friendly and neighborly, which I don't do those things. So.
Probably sees Jeremy out there working like a dog. He's never seen him out there doing a thing in his life yet.
That guy's gonna have a heart attack.
Oh, man. Great job.
Yeah,
gonna definitely get the resale value.
Your wife will get the resale value after you pass away.
Exactly. All right, gentlemen, let's call it a day on that. Tune in next, like and subscribe if you like what we're doing here. And until then, until next week, we'll see you later.